We have multiple layers of craziness. We have the people who participate in the systems, and those systems have the imprimatur of social legitimacy through the academy. Portland State being my former employer. And then you have the kind of the foot soldiers of the ideology. And I think that these individuals share certain characteristics. Put a tweet on this, and people lost their fucking minds. Can I swear in a podcast?
Oh, please.
I think so. Yeah, they lost their fucking minds. And it was about poor body habitus of people who, I can't remember the exact quotation, but people who participate in certain worldviews. I mean, you see it with neo-Nazis, right? Their ideology manifests in their bodies. These grossly overweight, or they're just like uber steroided muscular people. So you have a level of people who have some kind of undiagnosed low-level mental condition, who believe that they should be more successful. They're not. They blame the system. They get together with other people who believe this thing, and then they go to the academies, or they even go to teacher training programs. It's like those who can't teach, those who can't teach Jim, Woody Allen's favorite thing. Right. Like they become teachers. And so we have a kind of Western civilization has seen itself in Portland. We don't need to go anywhere. We've seen ongoing, continuous riots of people, and we know who these people are. We know these people are basically dyspeptic malcontents, underaccomplished, raging at the system.
They've told us they can't be governed. They put it on signs, right?
And the offering of all of this, and that's the other thing that's not even infuriating, used to be infuriating to me, but now it's just frustrating, is the link between the academy and the spill out to the academy. The link between what people learn and how people get caught in the orbit of the ideology, even if they're not true believers of every tenet or every belief. And then how that gives cover for the radicals.
All right, so here's the place where this gets strange for me. I have always been pretty bold about sharing my beliefs, even if I knew that they were out of phase with the room I was in, right? That's always been a positive thing. It's not always positive in the moment, right? It does cause issues, but the net effect of it has been positive. Increasingly, as the world has gone crazy and embraced sheer nonsense, right? In Portland here, most people, if you asked them what they believed, would, check lots and lots of boxes that would cause your and my blood pressure to rise. But here's the funny thing. When I confess my doubts, right? If I'm having an interaction and we're at the place in the interaction where I'm supposed to say the usual things about embracing equity and gender diversity or whatever it is that I'm supposed to say, I never say it. And I always say, well, actually, I'm concerned that is a very wrong perspective. And I explain something of what I see. I don't say very much, but I say enough that somebody can register that I am not party to that set of beliefs. I essentially never get challenged. What I get is relief from the person on the other side. And then, I'm not on board with that either, in fact, and then they pick up the ball. And I have the sense that what's going on is you have a lot of people who think everybody else is believing this thing and they better go along with it. But the slightest indication that they are in the presence of somebody who can handle a different perspective and they want to talk about it, they're just itching to do so. So that's the culture of pretending that I talked about, and I think it was Breaking the Spell. Dan Dennett talks about that a little bit, but we've created a culture in which people are pretending to know things they don't know and pretending to believe things that they couldn't possibly believe. Right. Men can become women just by saying so, enough that we should send them to a women's prison even if they're being sent for sex offense. They're
intact, so shall we say.
Right. They're intact.
They haven't had bottom surgery.
Capable of committing rape.
Right.
Guilty of a sexual crime.
Right.
We should still take them at their word.
Trans women are women, period.
No matter what.
And it is customary in every conversation. I have to say this. I'm sure I don't speak
Wait, are
for
we declaring
people,
pronouns?
But I speak. No.
Okay.
I support the right of anybody over 18 to transition. I support them to live fulfilling, happy lives, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is not about that.
Yep. No, absolutely. Look, if you're really in a situation where you're going to be happier and more fulfilled, saying, you know what, for whatever reason, my
Right.
body is out of phase with my mind, and I'm making this transition. I actively support it.
100%
But
actively support
I
it.
don't support pretending that that is more common than it is, and going after people too young to have a nuanced enough mindset.
Which is
Right. People who are, frankly, rightly feeling out of place. Right. If every young person is feeling out of place because civilization isn't working, and then you say, hey, you know why you're feeling out of place? Were you born in the wrong body?
Right.
Right.
Abigail Schreier talks about that in irreversible damage. It's the clustering effect.
Yeah.
You see the clustering effect.
And the point is, it is creating a artificial, momentary sense of relief that is going to be followed for most of these folks with a lifetime of regret.
Right. And that's the thing that's so horrific about this. Once this ideology falls into disrepute, ill repute, who in their right mind, you're going to see epic gaslighting. Literally nobody is going to say, you know what, I was in favor of mutilating the genitals of children experimentally.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to say
that. They're all going to pretend they were on the other side. Yeah.
You were on the other side, or I never said that. I never believed that. There'd be epic gaslighting. But that gets back to what we talked about before of speaking openly, speaking honestly. And like you said, some people are just not going to like you. Well, fuck them.
Yeah.
So that's brings us to something. So if I said something publicly or what have you that you didn't like, you would, and now I'm speaking for you, you would tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you said something that
first of all,
I would tell you privately. I would expect you to tell me privately. I wouldn't expect you, Boghossian, to.
Well, it depends. If you said something that mattered publicly, I would feel entitled to respond publicly, because the point is you're having a public discussion about something. It wouldn't be personal.
Okay, well, wait a second. Wouldn't it be better for you to tell me privately and then for me to perhaps reconsider or readjust my beliefs publicly so that it comes from me as opposed to the social?
It depends. If you say, as many have, that religion is a mental disorder,
right,
is a mind virus, right?
Which I think I have said something very similar to that.
Wouldn't surprise me in light of the fact that that was considered sophisticated in new atheist circles. Yeah. I don't see any reason that I shouldn't say, here's why that can't be right, and make an argument.
Yeah, okay, so I guess it depends on the claim. I guess it depends on what the claim is. I would think, so let me put it on myself. So if you said something that I thought was way out of line, I would tell you privately.
No, I don't think it is way out of line to say religion is a mental disorder. I think it is factually incorrect. It is logically untenable, right? So saying something that's out of line. So I guess it depends on if it's out of... That's the question. If I think you overstepped, then yes, I would say privately, look, here's the problem I have with what you said. But if you're taking an analytical position publicly, I don't see any reason I shouldn't analytically point out why I differ. And you may be right and I may be wrong.
Right, and that's the critical thinking piece again. I would, wow, how much more would you respect me if I reflected on it, thought about it, and said, you know what, I had this opinion, Bret or whoever said something to me. I looked it up for myself. I looked up the best available arguments and evidence from people on the other side. I don't have sufficient evidence. I've thought about it. I've changed my mind. Boom.
Well, there are two failure modes. So I see this as an important part of being an honorable
interlocutor.
Interlocutor. One, people do respect you for reversing your position on the basis of evidence or a persuasive argument. It in fact enhances your credibility with people, unless you do it too often, because what it indicates is that you're not putting in the work on the front end trying to be right. So you're wrong a lot and you reverse your position. That makes you not very credible. So the ideal thing is to do your homework on the front end. Try not to make arguments that are substantially incorrect. And when you do make an argument that's substantially incorrect, or miss a piece of evidence or misinterpret it, get on the right side of it, do it forthrightly, explain how you made your error, why you changed your mind. And then the point is that's about the best you can do, because, especially on complex topics, nobody is going to avoid being wrong all the time.
So isn't it better to have a friend like that who has those that's a disposition.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't it better to develop and cultivate a friendship with someone who has those dispositions than with someone who does not?
I would go further.
It's
I would
impossible
say
not to. Is that
you don't want that? As much as you may in principle like somebody who can't do that, it's too dangerous and too costly, right? The fact is, friendships are about something real, right? Friendships may be pleasant and aesthetically nice when times are good, but the point is, a real friend is somebody who's there when times aren't good, and what you can't afford is somebody who is going to talk themselves into a nonsense position because it's convenient to do so.
And a real friend is also someone, you know what they mean when they're honest with you, they're forthright with you, and they're telling you something because they believe, even if they're incorrect, that it's in your interest to hear it.
Right.
And if you surround yourself by people who don't do that, not only Aristotle writes about this, not only will you never be fulfilled in your life, those forms of friendship, virtue friendships, if you don't have that, you're really leading a life bereft of, you might have meaning, but bereft of any potential that you could ultimately have.
Well, I think actually the pandemic revealed this in spades.
Yeah.
That most people, especially young people who have somehow oddly gotten over the idea that they're supposed to partner with somebody, right? Who sort of see that as unnecessary or antiquated or something. That people got caught without anybody whose opinion they could actually trust. And what they heard was the party line coming from every person. You had no idea why anybody was saying those things, whether they really believed it, whether they believed it deeply.
So I think part of that confusion comes from a whole constellation of factors. Less so young people and more so older people. The older people, I think older people just don't trust our institutions anymore. I've been tweeting about this for years now. It's a crisis of legitimacy. Habermas talks about that. We don't trust our institutions because our institutions are not worth our trust. Younger people often conflate platform size with something to say. Just because someone has a large platform in whatever. I just had a podcast with a really nice guy. He had a lot of Twitter subscribers. First time I ever talked to him, I really enjoyed our conversation tremendously. But just because someone has a large platform, that doesn't mean anything. Nothing follows from that other than that they have a large platform.
Right. Well, I think that there are certain rubrics you can use to figure out whose critique is worth paying attention to. And somebody who has accomplished something, their critique means a lot more than someone who hasn't or maybe even can't accomplish something. Also, somebody with predictive power.
That second thing, I'm glad I didn't interrupt you. If you think you're smart, make a prediction.
Make a prediction.
Make a prediction.
Right.